as I said before, if you haven't seen the other parts of this, you can definitely check those out first, but if not, you could also stick around. This is a pretty good chapter coming up. I think it's an exciting one, so this might be a good one to start off with. And if you're interested in the story, you can check out the other parts later. But with that, I will begin. This chapter is entitled 7 o'clock. As the traveler revisited the trail, he did not look back to the cabin or think upon the old man. Striding quickly, he kept his head down and forcefully hammered the stick next to his right foot with every other step. The shade of old oak trees covered much of the ground below, allowing little sunshine to peek through their numerous leaves. He couldn't be sure, but he felt the leaning intruders eyeing him with contempt. Their misshapen trunks had seen many years of stress and turmoil, and their crispy bark was slowly peeling away from their torsos. There was much sadness among them, for they had seen summers and winters pass, but had never departed from their places of rest. Never had these trees looked upon the horizon and taken the steps to reach it. They were chained to the earth and doomed to an imprisoned existence. They did not exude experience or skill, nor did they illuminate with reverence. They had not been shaped or formed in any sort of way. They were wild growth, and their existence was sad, even though they were among leafy companions. The traveler took a brief moment to collect himself, as he escaped the old oak corridor and sat on a moss-covered stone on the side of the trail. He was noticeably out of breath and in need of a chug of water from his bottle. While opening the cap, he looked up at the mountain and saw nothing but darkness surrounding the tree line. The sky had become overcast and the sun was fading away into the clouds. Taking time to consider what he had done, the traveler unzipped his small green backpack and reached for a snack. Grabbing a granola bar between his skinny fingers, he convened aloud. Okay, he's probably fine, right? I shouldn't have left, I should go back. The sun was now slipping away, and a large wall of darkness approached the traveler as he crunched loudly on the granola. It wasn't my fault, he snapped at me, he muttered to himself. I think I should go back. The traveler was upset. He wasn't so much concerned about the burning stew or the old man's injuries. He figured the man would survive those. In truth, he was upset that he had left him alone to pick himself up and clean the mess. He kept picturing the man with his old twig broom, sweeping up the now lukewarm meal and crying to himself, no one there to give him a hand or to apologize. The traveler slowed his chewing and let the righteous guilt overtake him. Tilting his head into the air, he closed his eyes and felt his shoulders twitch as he released a tear. The splash of water dribbled down his face and onto his neck. He then felt the sky follow suit and strike his cheek with a single raindrop. He opened his eyes in a moment of silence, only to be startled by an immediate downpour and a crashing bang of thunder. It rumbled overhead and dispersed throughout the forest as the rain plummeted from the heights. Grabbing his backpack and walking stick, he quickly began to jog in the direction of the cabin. A strong gust of wind hit his front side and slapped more rain into his face. He re-entered the corridor of oaks, which were seemingly leaning even lower than before, their extremities poking his cheeks as he ran through. The ominous sky crackled a noise so monstrous that it made the traveler trip onto the muddy path. His forehead thumped a root and gashed a mark above his eyebrow. He put his hand to the cut and looked at the runny blood on his fingertips. The rain began to wash it away along with the mud covering the left side of his head. Picking himself up, he trudged onwards toward the cabin and glanced upon the clearing where it was located. Looking through the maze of oaks, he tried to make out the small building amongst the chaotic precipitation. He scanned around the spot where it had been, only to be confused by its absence. There was nothing there but a small lantern hanging from one of the trees, illuminating a small area in the darkness. He was sure he was in the right spot, as he had been there not 15 minutes before. A deep, thunderous roar then shook the ground beneath him and lingered for a few moments. The traveler was cautious not to lose himself in the turmoil. He looked up again through the tree line to see a black sky. There was no light and no visible end to the storm, just blackness. Trembling in the cold rain, he turned around to go back to the corridor. As he turned, he saw the large oak trees bending towards each other and twisting and entangling themselves in a condensed barrier. The view of the pathway behind them shrunk as the trees twisted and weaved themselves together. The traveler could see through a small opening as a tiny ray of light shone on his walking stick, which was protruding from the mud. He looked at his hand and realized that he had left the stick behind after he tripped. The opening in the trees then disappeared as he saw the stick vanish into the darkness. The rain was unrelentingly strong, with gale winds swooping in and knocking the traveler out of balance. The clearing was completely surrounded with darkness and brush, and there was no foreseeable escape from the enclosed area. Suddenly, a gigantically frightening barrage of noise hammered down from the sky, creating an enormous reverberation through the traveler's body. The sound echoed down the mountain in a rhythmic beat and pounded at the man's eardrums. Only when a minute expired did the noise dissipate into a sort of familiar cackle. Through all the booming and banging, it was that final sound which troubled the traveler the most and filled him with arresting dread. He had not heard thunder make such a noise before. Even still, the traveler circled the area in hopes that he would see a path out. He endured the wind and rain for 5 minutes longer, before its strength began to soften. The rate of water diminished, and the air calmed to a breeze. Before the last drops fell, the traveler heard the cracking of splintered wood behind him, as he turned around and witnessed the predominant tree of the group extending a branch towards an opening in the brush. Weeds and plants began to spread apart, leaving a small, dark passageway before the traveler. He focused his attention to the pointing limb, which he knew was commanding him forward. Unable to contend, the traveler placed his soaked, muddy feet in front of him and walked slowly towards the entrance. 7:30. Thank you guys for watching and listening to part 5 of The Walk. That is another chapter that I really like. It's very short. And actually a lot of the chapters in the story are pretty short. I think that's just kind of how my writing style is. So I've said this in other videos. I like to do the like kind of an outro just to add a little bit more to the video, especially if you're trying to relax and get that full ASMR experience. So I try to add a little bit at the end. And if you like the story, I think maybe you'll enjoy some insight into why I'm writing or what my inspirations are. And that's what I want to talk about with this part. So to start off, of course, I'm not an author. I write, but I don't really take it too seriously. This is I've written several other short stories before, so I do enjoy that kind of writing. I don't think I'd ever write a novel, but I do enjoy writing, and I think if you are interested in writing and maybe you just haven't gotten the inspiration for it yet, you know, find some time to kind of sit down and think of an idea and write it down, because really a story begins with one single idea. And this story, the main inspiration for it came from me going for a hike one day. I was with a friend, and we were, again, hiking up Mount Lafayette, and the idea just kind of came to me to write a story like this, and I think it's just a cool thing. And again, it's not the most original story ever, but I think that's kind of the point, as I've said before, for it to be very familiar. So I guess the point that I'm trying to make is, if you have an idea, it doesn't matter if it's original, it doesn't matter if it's new or whatever. If you like a type of story, or, you know, if something makes you feel good when you think about it, write about it, you know, because that's the best way to kind of, you know, bring that feeling back over and over again. Because I love to hike, I love the outdoors, I love the mountains of New Hampshire, and so writing the story just brings me back to that kind of setting and that environment. So if you, you know, and I think everyone is a writer deep down, even if maybe you don't love to read, maybe you find writing to be a little tedious, I still think you should give it a try, even if it's like a poem, you know, write a poem down. write something that makes you feel good. I think that's the most important part, to write for you. Don't try to write for anyone else, especially if you're not like a published author. But other inspirations for the story that I wanted to talk about a little bit, the number one is actually Alice in Wonderland. I won't go into why, but Alice in Wonderland is definitely kind of, I just like that idea of going into this strange setting, and just having it being crazy. So that's kind of what I'm doing with this story a little bit. So that's definitely one inspiration. Another inspiration has been a lot of different writers who have written about solitude in nature. So Henry David Thoreau, Ralph Waldo Emerson is another one. The author of Into the Wild, unfortunately I don't even know the author's name, I probably should. But that's another story about Christopher McCandless, which is actually a real person, and he went off to Alaska to live by himself, and he unfortunately died. But stories like that I think are interesting. Exploring yourself and who you are as a person in nature, I think, is just a great relationship, and really it's almost like the relationship between another person, because I think we all hold nature very close to each other, to ourselves, and sometimes we take it for granted. So that's a little insight into some inspirations. Again, if you're interested in writing, I think you should go out and do it. I hope you like that chapter. Of course, there are going to be more to come, so stay tuned for that. Let me know what you think, and let me know what you think might happen next. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.